What's up YouTube? Welcome back to my channel. Today we're coming at you with a really fun video. We are going to be tier ranking BuzzFeed writing advice. If this is your first time here, my name is Keelan. I am the published author of the epic fantasy All the King's Traitors, and on this channel we talk about writing and writing life and just anything to do with books in general. So in today's video we are going to be tier ranking writing advice, and I got this writing advice from BuzzFeed. I needed a place to get writing advice and I was like, what better place than BuzzFeed? This is not a commentary on the article. The article is called 16 Practical Tips for Anybody Who Wants to Write a Book. So we are going to be tier ranking writing tips for writing a book. These tier ranking videos have been absolutely everywhere on the internet. People are doing it for bookish things, Disney characters, movies, whatever it may be. So I thought, why not tier rank some writing advice? Now, this is a little bit of a disclaimer. The tier ranking that I'm doing is through my perspective as an author, yes, but it is all my own personal opinion, and it is how this writing advice works for me. It might work entirely differently for you. If I rank a piece of writing advice as something I dislike, it might be something that you really like. So just take everything with a grain of salt. This is my opinion, and this is 100% not a commentary on BuzzFeed's article. The article was wonderful. I just was like, where do I get writing advice? And BuzzFeed was right there. And so I thought to myself, why not tier rank BuzzFeed writing advice? So without further ado, let's get into the ranking. All right, everybody, so we are now on Tier Maker. We are going to be ranking this writing advice. There were 16 pieces of advice. I've created a ranking scale, and okay, we're about to get into something. I always see on these ranks that people put the really good stuff in the red. And I'm like, that doesn't compute in my brain. So up top we have here, lol, just know, that's writing advice that, like, for me is actually laughable and doesn't work. Then I have I disagree, which, you know, is kind of self-explanatory. It means I disagree with that piece of writing advice. We've got whatever, means I can leave or I can take it. I can see it means it doesn't necessarily work for me, but I can see how it works for other people. Surprisingly helpful is something that I was very shocked that it actually helped me, and actually awesome are the pieces of writing advice that I really like. So I haven't gone through and pre-tiered this, if that makes sense. Like, I haven't gone through and thought about this yet, so you guys are getting the original unedited version of this tier ranking, which I'm very excited about. So the first piece of advice is to journal your dreams. Now, if I recall the article correctly, they were saying to do that every day. I don't subscribe to that. However, I think journaling your dreams is actually super helpful, and especially if you don't just journal your sleeping dreams, but also your daydreaming. So if you have a really interesting daydream or a really interesting dream while you're sleeping, just jotting that down for future story ideas, I think is super helpful. So I'm actually going to put the first one in actually awesome because I love doing that. It's such a great way to get ideas, and I would just highly, highly recommend it. I carry a little journal with me everywhere I go, so if I have those daydreaming moments, I jot it right down. The next piece of writing advice from BuzzFeed was to read lots. And okay, so here's my thing with you need to read to be a good author. For me, reading lots is actually awesome and it helps me a ton. For other people, maybe it doesn't. But for me, again, we're doing this me personally. So reading lots is actually something that I'm going to rank as actually awesome. So the next one is to brainstorm on your commute. And it's kind of funny because I didn't actually think about this until I saw it in the article and I was like, oh yeah, I do that all the time. And I think it kind of goes hand in hand with journaling your dreams. However, I would not put it in the actually awesome. I think I'm going to put it in the surprisingly helpful because it's not necessarily a piece of writing advice you hear often, but it is surprisingly helpful. So that is where I am going to put it. It's more like oh, that really worked for me. So it's surprisingly helpful. The next item we have to rank on here is writing every day. And this is, I suppose, one of my unpopular opinions is I don't actually think you have to write every day to improve your writing skill. And for me personally, it doesn't work because it actually just seems to stifle my creativity because I like to write in long bouts of writing so I can really get on a roll. So I'm actually going to put this one in I disagree. The reason it's going there and not in lol just no is because I think maybe it works for some people, but for me personally, I disagree, and I actually don't think that's a piece of writing advice that we should perpetuate. Again, this is all my opinion and not a commentary on this article. It was a wonderful article, but that is just where I put it. I am going to disagree with it. The next piece of advice is setting achievable goals. I would say that personally, I don't actually think setting achievable goals is something I would define as actually awesome. I think it's a stepping stone to your larger goals, but I don't see another category where I can put it. Maybe I didn't think through these categories that well. You know what? It's going to go in actually awesome because I think the actually awesome part is setting big goals and then breaking them down into achievable goals. And I'm sure that's probably what the Buzzfeed article said, and I'm just forgetting the entire context of this. So it's going to go in actually awesome. The next piece of advice on here is that you should set your expectation that your first draft is not going to be perfect. And while I totally agree with that piece of advice, some people do have really strong first drafts, and I think there's a narrative out there that all first drafts are going to suck. Personally, mine suck, but this is my opinion on the writing advice. So I'm actually going to put that in whatever, because it's not an awesome piece of writing advice. It's just kind of meh. I think if you realize it and internalize it, it's going to be very helpful in pushing forward. However, it's not doing the work for you. It's not improving your writing craft. It's just a realization you have to come to. So it's just whatever. The next piece of writing advice is to read your draft out loud. And I had never done that before. And I'm counting in this, I got my MacBook to read my draft out loud to me versus me reading it out loud to myself. So I'm gonna include that in here, even though they were talking about it in the article, like you reading your draft out loud to yourself. But I'm gonna include the MacBook reading it out loud to me because that's the way I did it. And you know what? It was surprisingly helpful. I was not completely sold on the idea. But then when I had George, my British accent on my MacBook is named George. When George read it out loud to me, it was surprisingly helpful, so that is where it's going to go. The next piece of advice is to read the novel The Artist's Way. So it is a self-help book. I believe that came out in 1992, all about being an artist. I have not personally read it. If you've read it, let me know in the comments, let me know what you thought. But because I haven't read it, I'm just going to put it in the I disagree. I'm not saying it's a bad book. Not saying it's a bad book. It's not a commentary on this book. It's just I disagree because I haven't read it and I'm an author, so that's where it's gonna go. The next item on this tier list is to journal every day. This one's tough because I'm totally into the fact that people journal. I'm not trying to shit on your journaling right now, but I don't personally do it. However, I can see how just getting your thoughts out every day helps organize everything. And although it's not creative writing, it's just a reflection on your day and on your journey. So I'm going to put it in the I can see it category. I can see it helping improve writing. However, I don't personally do it. The closest I've gotten to journaling every day is gratitude journaling every day. And I think it just improves your outlook on life in general. So I can see it. I can see why it helps improve your writing. I'm just gonna take a quick pause here and ask you if you are agreeing or disagreeing with any of these. Let me know in the comments below. The next item on this list is to write short stories. And I'm so sorry, guys. I think writing short stories will help you improve your writing, but not writing a novel. They're very different structures, and I'm not saying don't write short stories, but I disagree. And I think I disagree to the point where I'm just going to put it in lol, just no. Actually, no, that's not true. I'm gonna put it in I disagree, because I disagree. It didn't make me go, ha, that's not a thing. So yeah, I'm going to put it in I disagree. I think it'll help you improve your prose, but in terms of helping you write a novel, I don't know, they're just very different beasts. A short story and a novel, I'm not saying one's more difficult than the other, I'm just saying they're very different. The next piece of advice on here is to go outside. And I'm going to put that in actually awesome. Actually, that's not true. I'm going to put it in surprisingly helpful. Although I think it's actually awesome, it is kind of surprising that going outside can help you write a novel and improve so much. It's just, there's so much inspiration. So it's not a typical piece of writing advice you hear, so I'm going to put it in surprisingly helpful. The next piece of advice is to listen to a podcast. Now, I kind of forget the context of this in the article. I think it might have been, maybe it was a podcast on writing, or maybe it was a podcast for inspiration, but this one's tough. I can see it. If it's listening to a podcast on writing, if it's listening to a podcast for inspiration, I can see it. And that's just where it's gonna be. Reading a book on craft, I'm not putting it in actually awesome because there's some books on craft that aren't great. So I can see how if you choose the right book on craft, it is going to be awesome for you, but you know, there's a lot of pitfalls in that. So I'm going to put it in I can see it. The next piece of advice is to interview your characters like as if it was a job interview or just as if you were having a chit chat. So to help you dive into the characters themselves, here's my kind of little problem with this one is that what happens is if you go into this depth, a lot of authors then end up putting all of that information in the story, myself included. Again, this is my opinion. So, and then what happens is your story just gets bogged down and you lose the plot and it's just a whole bunch of unnecessary backstory. So while I think this can be helpful in some cases, I'm going to put it as I can see it because I can see why it would be helpful, but I can also see pitfalls. That's just where we're gonna put it for now. The next is write other stuff. This is kind of similar to the short stories. I think it will help you improve your prose, but will it help you write a novel? I'm gonna put it in whatever because it might help some people, it might not help others. For me personally, I'm like meh about it. And you know what? I'm gonna move short stories to whatever. Could help, might not help. It'll help improve your prose, that's for sure, but will it help you write a novel? I'm not 100% sold on that fact. The last piece of advice here is write like you speak. And I remember the context of this in the article. They were basically saying, don't try and be literary, just write as you speak. And I'm actually gonna put that in lol, just no. The reason I disagree with this so much is because I'm thinking of it in the context of dialogue. I know they're also talking about narration, but if you take write like you speak and implement it directly into dialogue, you are going to have dialogue that's really not great. Or in my opinion, at least, if I wrote like I spoke in my dialogue, the dialogue would be bogged down by words that really don't mean anything. It wouldn't get to the point, and the characters just wouldn't have as much chemistry. You really have to be careful with this. You should write like you write, in my opinion. Don't try to be literary. Don't try and sound exactly like you do when you're talking out loud. Write like you write. Don't write like you speak. So that one I'm gonna put in lol, just no, because personally for me, no. All right, everybody, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Please comment below if you agree or disagree with any of the rankings that I put. Again, these are just my opinion. It is not a commentary on the article. I thought this would just be a fun video. If you are new to this channel, please consider clicking that subscribe button. And for everybody out there, if you want to turn that little notification bell on, make sure it's all filled in. That would be super helpful to me and my channel. Any type of like, share, subscribe is very helpful and so appreciated. Oh, and before you go, I always forget this and leave it to the end. I'm so sorry. Before you go, for any writers out there, we have a writing Discord group, which is called the Sprint Squad, which is linked in the description box below. Make sure you go and join because it's super fun. We talk about writing, we do writing sprints, and we've got a whole crew. There's about like 30 or 40 of us now, something around those numbers. And it's super fun. We just chit chat about writing and it's a great way to make writerly friends. To summarize, Discord, like, subscribe. I found this interesting. Let me know in the comments below if you liked it. All right, thanks so much, everybody. Thanks for joining, and we'll catch you on the next video. Bye.